off and the trees are starting to bloom. So,
That's the best time of year.
yeah.
Yeah.
Good
Hey, it's
evening,
beautiful here in the
everyone.
Caribbean.
What's that, Lakshmi?
I say good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome to Gita Wisdom this beautiful Tuesday evening, April 15th. I want to thank you all for giving me your association this wonderful evening. Heard you guys talking about New Jersey, my home state. Born and raised in Newark, New Jersey, uh, the cultural capital of where I don't know.
But Lakshmi, it's not Newark, it's Newark. And it
Yeah,
rhymes with
it's Newark.
Newark. If you're from
That's
New
right.
Jersey, it's Newark.
It's Newark, Nork. Yeah. So that's always a fun. Well, being in New Jersey, since I hooked up with Betsy in the Bhakti Barn, that's always a wonderful time for me. Whenever I go back to visit, besides my relatives, I visit my two sisters, Betsy and Chris, there, and we have a good time. Usually we have kirtan or I'll do a class there or something to that effect. So love being in New Jersey temporarily, that is. I've kind of grown out of the cold. Being in Puerto Rico for 4 years really spoiled me rotten, let me tell you. And
40? Did you say
what's that?
did you say 40 years or four?
Four. Four. Well, a total of six. I was there in the 70s for 2 years, 76 to 78. I started a temple and an ashram in the mountains there, which is still going on, by the way. And so I was there for 2 years, went back to New York. And then in 2017, my wife was accepted to the internal medicine residency program in San Juan. So we moved the family there, and that was lots of fun. I did a lot of interfacing with the yoga community, did a lot of kirtan and lectures and all kinds of things there. Have many, many friends that I was able to have the good fortune of coming in contact with and to a great degree, I'm still connected with those people in Puerto Rico. So yeah, 4 years. My wife was a doctor in a hospital during Hurricane Maria and COVID, so it wasn't as much fun for her as it was for me. And of course, if you know anything about Puerto Rico, it's a beautiful island, beautiful place. People are wonderful, but their healthcare system is not managed very nicely. So she had to bear the brunt of that. But be that as it may, thank you all for taking the time. I see Trish is here, Josh is here, Jai Krishna, Simone, welcome Simone, and Gokula Priya.
Much.
Mhm. Welcome to you, Simone. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you for the invitation. I was excited to be here. So
Wonderful.
I will see. Thank you very much.
I wanted to tell you that all the previous classes are on my YouTube page. So we're not that far into the Gita, so you're not way behind. And there are several classes preceding this one that you can, if you want, you can catch up at your leisure. So that's there, and you just need to go on the YouTube page that's entitled Larry Puglisi. I don't know how my name was changed to that. Originally, it was Lakshmi, but somehow or another it got changed to Larry Puglisi. But that's the page that it's on. There's two Larry Puglisis, one Larry Puglisi music, and then Larry Puglisi. I don't know if it says anything other, but that one, not the music one. The other one is my page, and all the classes and things that I've done in the past are up there. So Simone, that's for your information. All right, let's get going. We're beginning with the Bhagavad Gita, on text 20, I believe. I think we got up to 19. And now we're getting into, if you remember when we started um, this chapter, and we came upon a couple of things that we discussed. Is number one, there's two major dialogues going on, Krishna and Arjuna, which is the major one, and the other one is uh, Sanjaya and Dhritarashtra. So those are two conversations that's we discussed, and then we got into talking about Duryodhana and the different mindsets that are being presented in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. To review the history, we're just at the precipice of a war. It's a fratricidal war between two parts of the same family, the Kuru family. The one family that's identified as the Pandavas, five brothers who were the actual heirs. Their father was the emperor, and they're heirs to the throne, and their cousin brothers and their father. Their father is the brother of the Pandavas' father, and who's the emperor, and he was given the post of interim emperor until the five boys grew up and were old enough to take on the responsibility. So this introduction to Duryodhana, that side of the family, they're the protagonists. They're the ones that are trying to steal the throne from the legitimate heirs, the five Pandavas. So we got uh, first first several first several voices of discussion that we got was the mindset of Duryodhana and how it is described in the Gita how Duryodhana has the mindset which represents the materialist, and Arjuna has the mindset which represents the spiritualist. So we get these two in we get insights into both mindsets, and it gives us a clue as to why there's a war in the first place. Because some people ask if this is a spiritual book, a sacred text, the Bhagavad Gita, the Song of God, why is it being spoken in the middle of a horrible battlefield? So the reason being is that it's really the good versus evil and the responsibility of good not to let evil take over. Because the five Pandava boys didn't want the fight, but Duryodhana has given us, we only get a little insight into his mindset. You have to read the greater text called the Mahabharata to really understand the evil mindset of Duryodhana, all the things that he did, which demonstrated this kind of evil mindset, and all the things that Arjuna did, which gives him the title of the noble one, the kind-hearted one, the good. He represents the good. So all of these things are discussed in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. So we got a little bit into Duryodhana, and now we're getting into Arjuna and Arjuna's expression, and the whole first chapter being the setting and practical demonstrations of the good versus evil mindsets and all the indications that are there. Another thing I wanted to tell you, I think I might have mentioned this previously, but the every single, and this is really hard to imagine, but every single word in the Bhagavad Gita has relevance. It is profound and has relevance. And what I mean by that is that there should be no doubt in how Krishna is instructing Arjuna. And that is why the language is so specific. If you if you have my teacher's Bhagavad Gita translation, excuse me for one sec, you'll notice the title very specifically written this way is Bhagavad Gita as it is. And my teacher, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, explains that Krishna was very specific. He is, exacting in terms of bringing to Arjuna's attention, and actually the attention of the whole world, what is the methodology, the system, the discipline for overcoming negativity in one's life. Arjuna will, at the end of the first chapter and the beginning of the second chapter, will experience a dejection or depression. That's why the first chapter is Arjuna Vishada Yoga. And we understand why he's that way by his revealing of his mind to Krishna and vice versa, Krishna hearing him and counseling him. We get a very good idea why he's dejected. And this is not happenstance. This is very specific for us, for humanity, to give us insight why we come in contact with sadness and depression, and how, if we don't deal with it in the proper way, how it can overcome us, how it can overtake our good intelligence and cause us to make wrong choices. So that's the language of the Gita. We don't get it. We really don't have the time to get into all the specifics of the language. But I want you to know that if you have the Bhagavad Gita as translated by my teacher, Swami Prabhupada, he has commentary on most of the verses in the Gita. And in that commentary, the importance in that commentary is he explains a lot of these nuances of detail. So just wanted to give you that as a preface. So let's begin with the 20th verse, okay? And the 20th verse in chapter 1 reads as follows. At that time, Arjuna, the son of Pandu, so I mentioned that their father was the emperor and his name was Pandu, or the literal meaning of Pandu is the pale one, because his complexion was pale. Seated, so Arjuna seated in the chariot, bearing the flag marked with Hanuman. Does everyone know who Hanuman is? I see most of you would probably know Hanuman. Simone, do you know who Hanuman is?
I have a notion that is God. I'm not sure about from strength, um, but I don't know exactly. I don't remember
Yeah,
it.
Hanuman is considered one of the greatest devotees of God in his feature, in his manifestation is Ram. So, and he has the body of a monkey. So he sometimes is called the monkey god, but it's really the opposite of who he is. He's not a god at all, doesn't pretend to be a god. He is a devotee of Ram. And he is a very powerful warrior. So it mentions here, he's a warrior and a devotee of God, which is the same situation as Arjuna. Arjuna is a great devotee of Krishna. Uh, God manifests in the supreme features Krishna, and he's a warrior, one of the greatest warriors, especially out of all the great warriors that are amassed here in this battle on this battlefield. He's considered the greatest. So on his chariot, he has a flag of Hanuman. And after I read the verse, I'll explain why. So the flag marked with Hanuman, Arjuna took up his bow and prepared to shoot his arrows. He's ready for war. O king, after looking at the sons of Dhritarashtra drawn in military array, Arjuna then spoke to Lord Krishna these words. So it's understood from the above statement that the sons of Dhritarashtra were more or less disheartened. Why were they disheartened? Two reasons. If you remember the scene when the conch shells were being blown by both sides, and I made a distinction between the sound vibration of the conch shells of Duryodhan and all of his allies, and the conch shells that were blown by Krishna and the Pandavas and all of their allies. And it's described when the sound vibration comes out of the conch of Krishna and Arjuna and Bhima and Yudhisthira and Nakul and Sahadev, the five brothers, and all of their allies. It is a transcendental sound, that it means a spiritual sound that is so potent that it shatters the heart of the enemy. So we have two reasons why we can say they appeared to be disheartened. One is that transcendental sound vibration of the conch shells of Krishna and the Pandavas. And the second reason was when Duryodhan and his allies, Bhishma and Dronacharya and Duryodhan's brothers, when they see the military lineup, it's very interesting to note there is a sacred text called the Dhanurveda that is all about warfare, weaponry, how to use the weaponry, how to form your troops in battle, etc. So you don't get a sense of it here, but you do in the Mahabharata. You get a sense of some of these military formations. When they look at the formation of the Pandava army, it disheartens them because it's kind of an amazing array or formation that the Pandavas have placed their soldiers in. Now, keep in mind that the Pandavas are very outnumbered, vastly outnumbered. You might say, if there is, according to the notations in the Mahabharata, something like 600. Okay, there is controversy in terms of how many were actually there. Some scholars say it was 600,000, but the tradition of the Gita itself and the devotee scholars say the translation reads 600 million. So let's use the traditional number, 600 million. So if that's the case, we're looking at something like 350 million versus around 200 to 250 million. So it's quite a sizable number that's there. But even They know they outnumber the Pandavas, but when they see the Pandavas' military formation and how exacting it is and how um, it has potency and they become disheartened. Arjuna, on the other hand, he has no fear, even though he sees the great warrior Bhishma. He sees the guru of the warriors, Dronacharya. Duryodhan is no slouch either in terms of battle. And he's looking. He asked Krishna, we'll read that in the next verse. He asked Krishna to please, draw the chariot in between the two armies so I can assess what is going on there. But Arjuna is not having any fear. He's not disheartened because he sees all these powerful warriors and their formation. His disheartenment is of for another reason. We'll read about that. So, text 21 and 22, Arjuna said, O infallible one, and herein we're going to get a little insight to the exacting nature of the words. O infallible one, please draw my chariot between the two armies, so that I may see those present here who desire to fight, and with whom I must contend in this great trial of arms. Two things to note in these two verses. One is that Arjuna addresses Krishna as Achyuta. In the Sanskrit, you can't read it, but it says Senayor Ubayor Madhye Ratam Stapaya Me Chuta. So he addresses Krishna as Achyuta. Achyuta means infallible, oh infallible one, giving an indication of the divinity of the powerful supreme divinity of Krishna. On the other hand, Krishna is acting as Arjuna's servant. So it's really interesting to note that if this Krishna actually is who so many of the great saints and scholars have said he is, the supreme divinity, why is he acting as a servant? Why is he driving a chariot? It's a very menial task, really, in relationship to warfare. Yes, you have to be adept at what you do in terms of driving the chariot, because the warrior in the chariot is greatly dependent upon the skill of the chariot driver. But still, it's considered a menial position in relationship to other positions, generals and great warriors, Maharathas, and all that. So, on one hand, we have Krishna taking the position of servant. And on the other hand, he's being addressed as Achyuta, oh, infallible, oh, unconquerable one. Previously, he was addressed as Rishikesh. That means one who is the controller of the senses, not only his senses. You and I, as yogis, we are tasked with the responsibility to control our senses. The whole position of yoga is to actually bring the senses under control. And I quoted you that verse, Vacho Vegam, Manasa Vegam, Krodha Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Uttara Vegam, Udaropashka Vegam. Those are the six urges that the senses and mind are pushing us towards. Speaking, we know that some people are uncontrollable in their speech. The urge of the mind and the mind's ability to go hither, thither, and yon, to go all over the place. So the uncontrollable mind, krodha, anger, and how anger, if we're afflicted by anger, how it is such a powerful emotion that it can ruin everything, ruin relationships, ruin friendships, ruin family, ruin many things. In fact, there's a great saint, Narottam Das Thakur, who says, anger destroys everything. Just those very simple words indicating that uncontrollable anger. It's not that we don't have certain valid times where we should get angry. Certainly if someone accosts your family, your kids, or your spouse, and endangers them, certainly that is a time to get angry and to defend. So that's not what's being spoken about when we say Rishikesh is the controller of the senses, and Krodha, Vegam, is one of the urges needing to be controlled. It means anger, uncontrollable anger that can ruin everything. And then the Jiva Vegam, the uncontrollable tongue. People have problems controlling their tongue, and therefore they have weight problems. And nowadays, I mean, I was surprised to find out that they have all kinds of procedures so you lose weight. And one such procedure is they tie up your stomach or shrink your stomach somehow, I think through surgery. And I was just absolutely amazed. I mean, people come to my wife either as a doctor or as an Ayurvedic doctor, and they say, weight loss. And my wife's very simple remedy is you have to control your eating. Not only control your eating, but the times that you eat, the foods that you eat, and the consciousness that you approach eating in. All of these things are instrumental in controlling the urge to eat. So these urges afflict us: the urge jiva, the tongue; the urge of the belly, meaning that if your tongue is not satisfied, you just eat, and the belly just says, "Oh, come on, keep eating," even though you may not be hungry, you may be just desiring the taste. And then the last the urge of the belly and the genitals, and that means controlling our sexual impulses. And even in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, he mentions that one of the yamas is brahmacharya. And some people may interpret that any way they want, but the literal translation or the literal interpretation of that is controlling, depending on what ashram you're in, whether you're a celibate monk student, celibate monk lifelong, or whether you're a married person, there has to be some control of that. Otherwise, the uncontrollable urges in that way can get us into a lot of trouble, a lot of distraction, and a lot of trouble. So these urges need to be controlled. Krishna is called Rishikesh, the master of the senses, and we as individual, if we take shelter of Rishikesh, if we actually perform a sadhana, then that can bring our urges under control, and the depth of the yoga that we get into is very deep, because according to Patanjali, he says yamas, niyamas, asana, pranayam, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. He lays out the different layers of involvement that a yogi has to be, an external level and an internal level. So certainly the control of the senses is there. So Krishna is addressed as that, specifically because he's the controller of all senses, of all living entities. So herein he's called Achyuta, infallible, but yet he's performing a menial task. And this is described by my teacher, as just an indication of the greatness of God. That God not only wants to be worshiped, but he also wants to reciprocate. He actually, in different sacred texts like the Ramayana, he actually exchanges worship between him and his devotee, just like in the case of Ramchandra and Shiva. It's described Shiva worships Ram, but Ram also worships Shiva. So this kind of interaction, loving interaction, will allow the devotee to even experience service coming from God. God will reciprocate in that way. And it's kind of an amazing insight to think, because if many of us are from the Abrahamic religion perspective, either you were probably either raised in a Jewish religion, Christian religion, or in Islam. I would say most Americans are either raised Christians or in the Jewish faith. And then more recent times, we have a great Islamic population now in the United States. And that kind of perspective of God is what we're familiar with. Either I've experienced in the yoga world, when these kinds of topics come up, people say, I'm not into yoga for God. I don't believe that there is a God. I'm not into yoga for that. But the yoga texts are actually leading us on a path to connect or reconnect with the Supreme. That is really the function, the ultimate issue of the yoga process. So the indication here, we're getting an indication that there is reciprocation in this yoga of exchange, of loving exchange between the Supreme and the Supreme's devotee. So right in this verse, we're getting that indication that Krishna is acting as the charioteer, yet Arjuna is addressing him as Achyuta, the infallible one. And then he says here that the two armies, draw me in between these two armies, which is actual historical fact. There was this battle. And also metaphorically, we are on a battlefield in our own life. There are battles that we are, becomes our challenge. The battle between the intelligence and the mind, for instance. There are so many different types of battles, so many different types of challenges. So this is an indication here. Arjuna wants to see the two armies. He wants to know the two sides. We have, and within ourselves, we have good and evil. We have good and bad tendencies, right? And mostly, I would say, knowing all of you to the degree that I know you, and most of you are probably of leaning towards your goodness side, but may have a little bit of inclination to be naughty at times. So there's a battle. Intelligence is the discerning aspect of the chitta, of the mind. And it's meant to discern between, to make the choice and to have a purified intelligence, which comes from the practice of yoga. Actually, one of the many things that yoga does, besides getting the body into shape, having the body as a proper vehicle, to execute life and life's challenges, is the mind and the intelligence and the possessive and the identifying factor of the mind, which is called ego. All of these things are there. And the intelligence is meant to control. So when these things get out of control, then we have difficulties. And that's the battles that we face. That's the battlefield that we are on. We're on the battlefield of life. And, you know, we also have to be introspective. We have to draw our chariot between the two sides of our existence. And we have to assess. It's very important to be introspective. Introspection is a very important aspect of yoga and yoga practice because we have to assess what are the challenges that we are facing and become clear about those challenges, become clear about where our inclinations lie and why. Yoga can reveal to us why we are inclined towards badness or evilness or whatever the case may be. One of the explanations is samskaras. We've discussed samskaras. Samskaras means when your senses, your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth, your sense of touch, when they are interacting with the outer world and taking in the numerous perceptions and feeding them towards the mind, they are creating indelible impressions. And these impressions are on the subtle body. They're deep within the subtle body. And the more we do something repeatedly, the deeper that impression becomes. And the harder for it is for us to get away from it. For instance, if it's a bad habit, for instance, like, for instance, someone drinks when they get anxious and in order to relieve themselves from their anxiety, they may drink. And then that is the inclination we have when we get in anxiety, because anxiety is there, response is there. If the response to the anxiety is drinking, then the more we do that, the deeper that inclination becomes, that the deeper that samskara impression becomes. So that's what inclinations are. That's what our tendency, where our tendencies lie. So introspection is, and I will prefix the word introspection with honest introspection. The first one that we lie to is ourself. That's the first one. We can't promote the lie to others unless we buy into it. So that's why honest introspection is so important. If we can't be honest, we can't see things clearly, because dishonesty is a product of tamagun, of ignorance. There's nothing to be gained by dishonesty. And especially if we cultivate dishonesty to ourselves, then quite naturally, the dishonesty tendency will be projected outwards to others. We buy into the lie and then we project it out to others. So introspection is a very, very important component in the contemplative nature of yoga, to contemplate, to sit and to look at what are the things that are holding me back. And you may be sensitive and aware enough to recognize what are those things. But then what follows is, do I have the strength, the determination, the perseverance to deal with those weaknesses, those chinks in my armor? Do I have the strength to take on a strategy, a methodology, which will help me get by those? This is yoga. That's why I use the word strategy or methodology as one of the definitions of yoga in the Bhagavad Gita. And that's when we spoke a little bit about sadhana in our previous class. It's sadhana, according to Patanjali, is something that you do again and again over a long period of time. So if you're in pursuit of your spirituality, it means you have to cultivate a spiritual sadhana, something that you do again and again. When I became a devotee of Krishna in 1972, one of the vows I took it was to chant, to do japa for 2 hours a day. So for the past 53 years, I've been doing my sadhana. So it means something repeated. So every day I rise early in the morning because it's a sattvic time, a more conducive time, and I do my chanting, my japa. And that helps in the process of yoga. It helps to purify the heart and the intelligence. And it helps us to actually face the dishonesty that we may have, that may be there, that we may be aware of, but not strong enough to deal with. So all these things are instrumental. Duryodhana was dishonest to himself, and thus he projected it outwards in adharmic activity, activity that was irresponsible, not only to himself, not only to his family, but to the citizenry that they were the Kshatriyas or the warriors were responsible for protecting. He created a whole scenario which tried to put the Pandavas in the position of weakness and irresponsibility and not worthy of being the leaders of the emperor and the leaders of society. That was his whole life. His whole life was bent on trying to discredit the Pandavas and coming up with schemes to dislodge them from their rightful position as heirs apparent to the throne. Anybody have any questions on what I just said? I said a mouthful. But anyone have any question or comment that you would like to express at this time? Or if you like, you can hold it to the end. Anyone? Okay. I will continue. So we made the comparison. Krishna is assuming the role of servant. Arjuna is giving him orders, but Arjuna is still recognizing Krishna's position. And that verse is there, it explains in that way. So we'll move on to verse 23. And he says, Arjuna says, let me see those who have come here to fight, wishing to please the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra. So now Arjuna is calling a spade a spade. He uses the term evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra. He includes both the father and son by saying it that way. He could have said the evil-minded Duryodhana, but he doesn't. He says the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra, and that means it's inclusive of Dhritarashtra, because Dhritarashtra is supporting his son's nefarious activities. He has the power, both on a political level and as the father, to subdue his son from pursuing this course of action. But he doesn't. In fact, he supports it. So when Arjuna addressed the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra, he's actually saying evil-minded Duryodhana, evil-minded Dhritarashtra. And he wants to see. He wants to see who and what are his challenges, who has come here to fight, to kill and be killed. And this is what I was saying about introspection. We want to know what our demons are. We want to see, what we have to fight, what it is in our life, what are our weaknesses that are challenges that we may be habituated to, and what we have to fight and how we have to fight it. This is what Arjuna is faced with right now. And that's why he's looking, just correcting here. Okay. And that's why he's looking at he wants to see the two armies. I want to realize what are my challenges here. The evil-minded Duryodhana and his 99 brothers. The wicked and twisted Shakuni, his uncle, who is like all throughout this, he's in the background, he's whispering in Duryodhana's ear, oh, here's how you can kill them, here's how you can get over on them, etc. So all of these uh, different presences of negativity and negative force that are there facing him. And also, not everyone is like Duryodhana or his brothers or Shakuni. Bhishma and Drona are unique cases. They are good, basically good-hearted individuals who just have a misunderstanding of proper dharma. From their understanding, their dharma as warriors and as protector, they are to protect the throne. So they lost sight of the fact that the throne was not Dhritarashtra. He was only the interim king. The throne was actually the Pandavas. And they should have recognized, Krishna says in the Mahabharata, Dharma without compassion is not Dharma at all. So because Duryodhana was acting in such a uncompassionate way towards the Pandavas and others, they should have recognized that and not supported him. So every one of the opposing force, they're either there with a similar mindset to Duryodhana. In fact, many of those kings were of that mindset, more of an evil-minded mindset. And there were a few which misunderstood Dharma and aligned themselves with the wrong side. That was there. So he wants to see this. He tells Krishna, pull the chariot in front. Let me look. Let me see who has come here to fight. Text 24. Sanjaya said, O descendant of Bharata, having thus been addressed by Arjuna, Lord Krishna drew up a fine chariot in the midst of the armies of both parties, which is another indication. There is divinity within the heart. According to the Bhagavad Gita, divinity has three major features. The person God, the energy of God, the spiritual underlying energy of God, and divinity that is sitting next to our soul within the heart. Those are the three aspects of divinity which are described in the postgraduate study of the Bhagavad Gita called the Srimad Bhagavatam. So this understanding is there. So if we take on an introspective nature, in other words, if we try, if our sankalpa, if our intention is to be honestly introspective, then that feature of divinity within the core of the heart helps, assists us, gives us clarity of perspective, clarity of vision to understand how it can be done. So this is the important feature of being introspective, understanding that we need help and guidance. And we'll see that later on in the end of the first chapter and the beginning of the second chapter. We'll see how that guidance comes, what position Arjuna takes to do that. But for us, in the here and the now, we have to have an intention. We have to be inspired to want to want to see clearly. The word in the Bhakti Yoga tradition that is used is lolyam, and lolyam means eagerness or greediness. That one cannot advance unless they're eager to do so, whatever it takes. That's where the honesty comes in. Wherever it takes, whatever it takes us, even if it means recognition of our weaknesses and also the challenge of dealing with those weaknesses in a very specific way. That's what sadhana is. That's really what samadhi is. Samadhi comes from the root word samadhan, and samadhan means that resolve. You have the clarity of vision and the resolve to do that. Let me just check that. Yeah, it means you have the resolve to find the solution and then through sadhana incorporate that solution into your life. In the Bhakti Yoga tradition, just by virtue of sadhana, then these couple of things happen. What happens when you go to clean your room? What realization do you have when you go to clean your room? Who can share with me what realization they might have when you go to clean your room? Anyone? Okay,
Well, I'm new,
it's
so
that
I
time.
can share.
Go ahead.
I
What
don't
is
know.
that?
It's Simone.
Simone, go ahead, Simone.
I'm new, so I can speak. Um, I've struggled a lot with the organization in my life, but seeing that is the inner reflection. So when I do that, now I do it very deliberate, like very aware that when I am organizing, it's also something inside. I am not sure that how to explain that because my kind of my language barrier, but I could share what I think is basically in short words that. So
You're
when
you're make you're making an endeavor through your organization, and it reflects upon even your internal.
yes,
Is that
I
what is that what
with
you're
the
saying?
yeah with the time I feel more connected with that. So I feel more connected with that. I'm not just doing something superficially. I'm doing something more. Because
Thank
it's
you.
like one of my difficulties in my life in my teenagerhood. So it turns in the opposite now, like I'm very aware. So that is one of my thoughts.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Anybody else? You know, one thing I like to do is I like to clean. I just feel it's very therapeutic, and I like helping around the house. And I'll walk into, my wife will say, "Can you please clean the office because it's really dirty?" My immediate instinctual response is, "No, it's not." And she said, and she's like hyper observant, super observant, really amazingly can see things that haven't a clue about. And I say, no, it doesn't look dirty. And then all of a sudden I'll start sweeping and there's the pile. You know, at the end of my sweeping, there's the pile. So what happens is when you start the process of cleaning, you realize, yeah, there is dirt. There is a lot of dirt. So when one starts a sadhana, you know, based on certain principles of um, purificatory principles, what happens is when the sadhana becomes a cleansing process, and then what becomes revealed is what are those weaknesses that we're experiencing, that we have, what is the dirt in our heart, and secondly, as a result of the sadhana, the purification draws to the surface the good qualities that we have, the kindness. Undoubtedly, all of you are kind. Undoubtedly, all of you are considerate to greater or lesser degrees. Undoubtedly, all of you are compassionate to greater or lesser degrees. Undoubtedly, all of you are charitable to greater or lesser degrees. Those qualities which are there, which reside in your heart, due to the process of sadhana, uh, the cleansing, the removal of the negativity, the negative emotions, and all that happens, and simultaneously, what rises to the surface is the cream of your qualities, the qualities of your heart. And the more you do that, because samskaras are being developed by virtue of your sadhana, then the more those cream-like qualities come to the surface more and more. It becomes like a process, an automatic process. So these are, some thoughts regarding this verse. And that was verse 24. So 25 reads, in the presence of Bhishma, Drona, and all the other chieftains of the world, Krishna says, just behold, Partha. Partha is a name of Arjuna. And again, it has significance because Krishna is understanding where Arjuna is going. So Partha means he's the son of Prita, who's Kunti, and that's royalty, nobility. So he's calling him, oh, noble one. Yeah, you're the son of noble parents. Oh, just behold, Partha, all the Kurus assembled here. Just witness, view before you all of these personalities that have come here to kill you. Look at that. And really, those negative emotions really put down what we really have to offer. If we entertain it, if we live in it, if we live in our anger, if we live in our sadness, if we live in our dishonesty, etc., it actually suppresses the cream of who we are, the goodness, and that rises to the surface instead. So here, Arjuna, Krishna is saying, view the challenges before you. Text 26. There, Arjuna could see. I'm just looking at the time here. Arjuna could see. We'll end with this verse. Within the midst of the armies of both parties, his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends, and also his fathers-in-law and well-wishers. All of those are in front of him, ready to do battle. I'm going to go to 28, if you all don't mind, because I think that will kind of conclude the thought. When the son of Kunti, this is 27, Arjuna, saw all these different grades of friends and relatives, he became overwhelmed with compassion and spoke thus. I'll stop here because just that, remember I was saying that these verses that we're reading now give us insight into the minds of Duryodhana and Arjuna. What was Duryodhana's response when he saw Arjuna and the Pandava army? What was his response? Can anyone remember what Duryodhana's response was in those first several verses that we read? Who can tell me?
He's afraid.
Trish?
He was afraid that the relatives of Arjuna wouldn't fight him, and he was afraid.
There was fear. And that fear manifest how? Do you remember?
He was trying to threaten everybody into fighting harder by putting the fear
Yeah,
into them.
yes. He was trying to manipulate. He's trying to be diplomatic, and he was trying to manipulate the situation, through diplomacy, insult, and whatever he could do. That was his response. What's Arjuna's response? We just get Arjuna's response. What's Arjuna's response, Trish?
He didn't want to kill his kinsman, and
Yeah, he's overwhelmed with compassion. Now, these are two great warriors, two great generals, you know, two significant personalities. And we're getting the different mindset and why now we're getting answers as to why this battle is being fought. Because the duty of a Kshatriya is to protect citizenry from harm. And instead, Duryodhana is using his position to gain as much as he wants. It's like a politician, modern day politicians, right? They get this position of power, and then you read later on, oh, I just was reading today, this politician bought all kinds of stocks when she heard that the tariffs were going to be postponed or something like that. And then the result was going to be, you know, uh, the stocks were going to soar. So here we have a person who couldn't resist the temptation. And God knows that was just one that was revealed. God knows who else did it, in order to take advantage of that. So that's the difference between self-motivation and selfless motivation. It's not that a person can be totally selfless. There are some certain things, of course, in relationship to ourself we have to consider. But there is compassion. And that was Arjuna's response to seeing the army and assessing what was going on. And Duryodhana's response was, how can I manipulate the situation to get exactly what I need to win the battle and become the unrightful heir to the throne? So I'll stop here. Does anyone have any question, comment, observation, realization that you would like to share with the rest of us? Always eager to hear, from you all to see, what comes out of it. So anyone, please feel free. Uh-huh. Thank you. You're welcome, Eugenia.
Hare Krishna.
Any
Prabhu.
questions? Yeah.
Yeah, just one comment that back home there is saying that if it wasn't for Shakuni, there would not have been Mahabharata, and if it wasn't for mantra, there would not have been a Ramayana. In other
Right.
words, that means Kaikeyi and Dhritarashtra were in bad association with Shakuni, and
Yeah.
Dhritarashtra was not that bad of a person that who wanted.
Right. 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 He wasn't like Duryodhana, but he had the bad association. It's a very good point about the association that we keep. We see that Kaikeyi in the Ramayana was influenced by Mantha. She wanted to be in a good position, and therefore she incited Kaikeyi to go against Ram, to get Ram out of there. And Duryodhana was definitely influencing his father Dhritarashtra. So that's a lesson for us all. I know in my older age, I have become, uh, I think deeply about what it means to be a friend, and and people that are so-called friends. And I have in the last decade, I have kind of weeded my garden in the sense that, and you have different levels of friendship also. I mean, someone you may occasionally associate with, someone when you see, you may run in the same circle, you say, and you're friendly with. And then there's the level of friendship, which embodies love. You love this person. You trust this person. You would reveal your mind to this person, and that person would reveal their mind to you and get your opinion. So it's really good. It's part of the introspective process, to do that kind of assessment. As Arjuna is assessing what he has to face, that's what we have in our life. We have to assess what we have to face to put ourselves in a position which is conducive to our spiritual development. Thank you, Barb, for that. That was very astute and very good observation. Thank you for that. Anybody else have anything to say? Observation? Anything you'd like to share? Any doubt? Any question? Please feel free. Please do not feel intimidated. We are all here to learn, myself mostly included. I do these sessions because I learned so much from reading the Gita again, and I learned so much from you all. So your questions are actually helping me. So anyone else
Thank
have?
you. Thank you for your explanation of the sadhana, because I've been working on improving my spiritual practice. So the
Yes,
repetition and the explanation helps.
yes. Yeah, it's a very important aspect of our spiritual development. And, when we want to grow in that way, we have to do things practically. And sadhana is the practical application of a methodology. Anybody else
Yeah,
would like to?
I do.
Okay, Amy, go ahead. And you always have some good questions for me. Go ahead, shoot.
Okay. So we talked about when Arjuna surveys, I guess, the battlefield and the enemies, and there are people who are bad, and then there are people who are misguided in their dharma. How do we
Right,
think about the people misguided in their dharma? Because they're not bad
right,
people, right?
right,
Is there
right.
some way of addressing these folks as we progress through the Bhagavad Gita about, I don't know, how we look at these, and they can change, right? And
Absolutely. Yep. That's why in yoga there is an emphasis on knowledge. Because what helps the light bulb to go off, in a person who may be misguided in their dharma is having good association and gleaning knowledge from that association. And knowledge doesn't necessarily mean, a person speaking philosophy. You can be in association of a person who's just a good example, of a dharmic lifestyle. And that is a very powerful educational tool. So how we think of those people, yeah, they're misguided. They may basically be good people, and due to influence of association, um, the perpetuation of bad habits, etc., they remain in that misguided situation. So by I feel by being a good example or the best example I can possibly be, that that may have some influence on people, on a person. And Arjuna, in this particular instance, the misguided are highly aware people, and prior to their death, they're in full realization of what happened and why. Like
Mm.
Bhishma is a classic example. In fact, Bhishma is so aware that Krishna, while Bhishma is on his deathbed, Krishna asks Bhishma to instruct Yudhisthira about how to rule a kingdom.
Hmm.
So if he was bad, intrinsically bad, Krishna wouldn't have done that. But Bhishma was intrinsically good, who just happened to have the wrong association. One of the uh, things that they mention in the Mahabharata about Bhishma being influenced by bad association was that he ate in the house of Duryodhana. Because according to the Bhakti tradition in particular, consciousness of the cook goes into the food.
Mm.
That's why it's advised as much as you possibly can to eat your own cooking. And beyond eating your own cooking is to have a ritual of gratitude for everything that you've been given. Gratitude to God, to the Supreme. Like in our household, for instance, my wife cooks, I cook. We cook, and after we finish cooking, we actually make up a plate and we put it on our altar and we do a meditation of gratitude, thanking the Supreme and our teachers for giving us this opportunity. So in the case of Duryodhana, having that influence verbally and even subtly by the consciousness that was going into the food that Bhishma and Drona were eating. So we should have the compassion, Amy. We should not look at the misguided in a negative way, but have that compassion. And because most people are good, and most people may just have the wrong association, and that will lead to their being misguided. So I guess in short, to not be judgmental, whereas that judgmentalism can separate you from your compassion towards them. That would be a helpful hint, I think. What do you think about that, Amy's
Yeah, no, it's
strategy?
an interesting thing to think about.
Yes,
I'm
it is.
I'm curious. Well, this is a longer conversation, but what does association exactly mean?
Yeah. In brief, I can tell you um, to have people in your life that are positive, minimally, and maximally that are spiritually advanced. So either through counsel or observation, you can see what it means, to be a spiritually advanced person. And you may then ask the question, how do you know who's spiritually advanced? And actually, in the second chapter, I believe it is, second and seventh, in a few places in the Gita, Krishna gives out the characteristics of a spiritually advanced person. So he doesn't leave us hanging in that way. So that's how we know association, through knowledge.
Hmm.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. So glad you could join me this evening. So pleased to be with you and have your association. And as always, make sure you have a happy, healthy, and holy week coming up.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay.
Thank you very
Till
much.
next, thank you all. Till next
Thank you.
Tuesday,
Bye.
same time, same station.